The only explanation I have for this is my age, because I guess these things are still very slow to take effect on me. Because thinking Carson Beck, not a Georgia quarterback, a Miami quarterback, still seems strange to me, because the phenomena of the transfer portal still seems extremely new to me. But then I'm thinking through some things, and I'm thinking Shea Patterson, Ole Miss to Michigan, Justin Fields, Georgia to Ohio State. It's 2019. This has been going on for a while now, but I still, when it comes to marquee players that become associated with a particular team and have a particular status, it's difficult for me to think of them in another uniform. And Carson Beck would be the latest.
Yeah, no, I get it. I'm the same. It's just like, oh yeah, like he's. Oh wait, no, oh yeah, those kind of things have been going on. But yeah, it was funny because we had talked about the possible or Miami needing to add a quarterback. First of all, the absolute necessity of that, having seen Emory Williams in the bowl game. Decent guy, more of a program player. Like I said, I put up the old recruiting notebooks. I'm like, he's a program player, but a rotational one. Judd Anderson is like a practice body, basically kind of a guy. And then Luke Nickel has potential for the future, but that's not good enough for right now. And talked about, for me, my pecking order, and again, none of these guys were in the portal at the time, was Ewers 1, Beck 2, Jalen Milroe being 3. And then the very next day, Carson Beck, who had put his name in for the NFL draft, heard back that, his draft prospects were lower than Cam Ward even. Cam Ward was like a borderline 3 to 5-ish, kind of 3 to 4, third or fourth round pick last year. Around this time, that was the grade. Like Carson Beck was maybe a day 3, which is like a round 5 to 7 type, way at the bottom end of the draft. Prospects. So he went into the portal, took an about face, and seeing the success that Cam Ward had here at Miami, decided to bring his talents to, take his talents to South Beach, but we all know that Coral Gables is not South Beach. But, it's the phrase from LeBron in 2010. Come on, guys. But yeah, he's taking his talents to South Beach metaphorically, and he's already on campus. There have been the pictures of him, players enrolled for spring semester and moved into their dorms a couple of days ago. And getting a guy who threw for more than 7,300 yards, 52 touchdowns, and 18 interceptions over 2 years as Georgia's starting quarterback, that's good business. That's the best option that was out there. The number one player in the portal, I want to say, I don't necessarily know that there's a better player at the position who's transferred this year. I might be forgetting somebody. But this year having transferred, I don't think that there's anybody better than a Carson Beck. Has his flaws, but yeah. And then, Jalen Milroe and Quinn Ewers today have, Jalen Milroe previously, also on Thursday, I want to say, and then Ewers today have announced that they're going to the NFL draft. So yeah, this was a move that absolutely had to happen. This is in terms of what Miami has, I thought that Cam Ward was like a 3-win player on top of what we would have been able to do without him. And for me, I've seen this team fail so much that my baseline now is 7-5 and prove me wrong. We'll go from there, but that's where I've been. I've said it for many years. Now we've done the things where I think that they've been able to prove me wrong, right? So we got Cam Ward. Oh, before that, I was thinking 7-5-ish. You get Cam Ward, thought he was like a 3-win player. We win 10 games, could have won a couple more. Proves itself to be true. Carson Beck is not Cam Ward, but I think 1.5 to 2 wins. I think that you could be looking at a 9-3, depending on how things on the rest of the team and the rest of complimentary football go. It definitely raised the floor. And then if you look at what he's done, I know Georgia's one of the biggest, baddest teams around, right? But this is a guy who's won 23 games, guys. So, if you're talking about, okay, we should be around that 10-win, pushing for ACC championship game appearance and the level, again, it makes sense. Now, Carson Beck does need to rehab from his ulnar collateral ligament surgery. It is not Tommy John surgery. So Tommy John is ligament replacement surgery and that's what happens in baseball, mostly for pitchers who throw the ball all the time. It's the inside of your elbow. This one, if you're wondering what the ulna or the radius, right? The one on the inside here. That's the one that will completely shred for a pitcher more because of their motion. And then you actually have to have that replaced. And there have been, you can look up into that. But Tommy John, pitcher for the Yankees, was the first one to have it done. And so it's been, affectionately named or, nicknamed from. It's like, in a different sense, Lou Gehrig's disease is not actually called that. It has a medical name, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, the ALS, but similar kind of a thing. So it's not Tommy John surgery. It's not ligament replacement. It's ligament repair. And Carson Beck has already had that. And he's, according to Mario at the presser that he had yesterday, ahead of schedule on his recovery. And if you think, okay, well, what does that mean in terms of on the field performance? It's the same injury Brock Purdy had in January a couple of years ago. Had that surgery in the offseason, was back for fall camp, played the entire season for the 49ers, right? Same injury. I don't know if this is the same surgery. I didn't look that up, but the timeline is shifted because that injury was had at the beginning of December, not in January. So there's your parallel comparison. But in terms of everything, getting who Miami needed, the best quarterback in the portal for the second year in a row. Again, I believe that to be true. Both Cam Ward last year and Carson Beck were the best available options in the transfer portal. They're not the same. So I'm not sitting here and saying, oh, Carson Beck is going to be exactly what Cam Ward. I didn't say that. Don't lie on me for people who are half listening while you're doing dishes or cooking or something. Be like, oh my God, Cam said. I did not say that. But he definitely raises the floor, definitely puts Miami back into that 9-10 win category. And now I believe that this team should be able to compete for and contend for an ACC championship and greater, with the Carson Beck, who has been on big stages with one of the biggest, baddest programs around, since he was there, starting for 2 years. And again, and he's a Miami, not a Miami kid. He's a Florida kid, Jacksonville Mandarin. That was a star quarterback there. He came to campus. This is back in 2019-20, back when he was a recruit and everything. Shout out to Mark Richt. And even before that, because he threw on campus in, 7-on-7 and player camps and everything. And Mark Richt, noted quarterback guru, a former University of Georgia coach, said, I'm good. Thanks for throwing. We're not going to offer you a scholarship. Good luck. Godspeed. See you later. Interesting kind of about face to that. Obviously, multiple coaches on from when he was a recruit. But yeah, now Carson Beck will be making his way downtown, walking fast, and everything down to be a Miami Hurricane.
And so we'll never know unless Carson Beck wants to open up about it. But entering this season, I posted a quarterbacks video and I researched every site I could get a hold of that I thought was credible. And Carson Beck was across the board. Now, this did not turn out to be the case, but before a game was played in 2024, coming off a strong 2023, was rated the number one quarterback in college football by everything I could get a hold of. And also, most of those were also a projection toward the NFL draft at that point.
Yeah.
He struggled at times. He played better than, as is often the case, once you struggle and you're pretty prominent, then people think, oh, you're having a horrible season. Neither was the case. He struggled at times. He's a good quarterback. He's got the arm. He's got the build, and he can deliver. And I think it's much of what you said relates to the evaluation that we have many times to say, this is a great quarterback NFL draft class, or this is a poor one. The same thing in the transfer portal. The number one player at a position one particular year doesn't necessarily equate to the next year's number one player at that position.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it is in the pecking order, but not relationally. Number one here is not the same as number one there. But as you were talking, about Carson, I decided that, I looked up his game log for this year. Solid. He had highs like, the opener against Clemson, 70% completions, 2 touchdowns, and 278 yards, and a 34-3 win where Georgia just beat their brains in. Had some uneven performances, 439 yards and 3 touchdowns at Alabama, but 3 interceptions that cost them dearly. 2 interceptions against Mississippi State, would have liked to have not seen those, but 459 yards and 3 touchdowns, in a 10-point win. We'll take that. Texas, Georgia beat Texas, but Carson Beck played like dumpster juice. 55% completions, 175 yards, and 3 touchdowns. 3 picks, no touchdowns. That's pretty terrible. But again, found a way navigating a team to victory. So that is, if I don't believe in quarterback wins as a stat, but if you talk about leading a team and getting them into right plays, and even when you're not having a great performance yourself, finding ways to get the team to win, at number 4 Texas, that's one you see. 3 interceptions against Florida. Don't love that, but won by 2 touchdowns, 62.5% completions, and 300 yards, 2 touchdowns. Oh, that's in Jacksonville, by the way. So that's his home game. The world's largest outdoor cocktail party. Played really poorly against Mississippi, Ole Miss, no touchdowns, 1 interception. But from there, turned it on, man. 347 and 2 tugs, no picks against Tennessee. Obviously, the sacrificial lamb towards the end of the year game against UMass was, 65% completions, 4 touchdowns, 300 yards. And then Georgia Tech, 297 and 5 touchdowns in a game that 5 overtime craziness that we were not expecting. And then, Georgia did win the SEC championship game, but got hurt on the last play of the first half there. Was not necessarily having a great game, 57 out of 13 for 56 yards. But Georgia was running the ball and Texas was running the ball. So, hey, you get injured there and on that last play. Interested to see what he could have done. But yeah, I mean, this is a player, and you're looking at the stats there. Yeah, you take off a little bit, but basically, from his redshirt years or years that he was backing up Stetson when Georgia won those championships. But, comes in, throws for almost 4,000 yards as a junior, 24 touchdowns, 6 picks. And then this year, just short of 3,500 yards, 28 and 12. But, those 12 interceptions were largely grouped. He had 3 games with 3, a game with 2 against Mississippi State, and a game with 1. But he didn't throw interceptions in any other game. So I get why people are saying, hey, there are some turnover issues that need to be curtailed. The same thing was true for Cam Ward. It is different, I know, but that was a thing. And if you look at Cam Ward's turnover profile coming in, there were more of them in more places, right? There were the fumble issues, and that was a thing for ball security in and around the pocket for a quarterback who moves around a lot and things like that. There were also the interceptions for Carson this year. 4 games, well, 5 games, and that's where all the interceptions came from. He had 9 interceptions in 3 games, guys. So they can kind of tend to snowball some, but I think it's maybe a little overblown because, and there were a couple tip ball things that happened throughout, some of those interceptions, but I think that he can be much more towards that 6 interception or, maybe 8 or something. I think that the number can definitely get down from what it was, especially when you look at the majority of the games, he did not turn the ball over. It's just when he did turn the ball over, it was a lot, but quick personal Cam story because, hey, I'm me. My first game in Michigan basketball, there's freshman, JV, and varsity. I never played freshman because I was nice like that. So I played on JV my first game, and I played point guard. I was not a point guard at the time. I was more of a 2 guard. You got this wet jumper, hey. So coach is like, oh, so I'm like, cool, who's starting at point guard? And he's like, you. And I'm like, I haven't been running point in practice. What is going on, coach? He goes, I think yada, 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 yada. I had, and this is going to be crazy, I know. I had 30 turnovers in the first game because the other team pressed and my team went down to go just set up the offense. And I'm like, yo, I got 5 guys on. Like, what am I doing? Like, I have like 2 on me. I got a third one here in a passing lane. Like, where am I supposed to go with the ball? Mark Hell. Like, Dave, I need you because we got to work together. And our statistician was like, well, technically, Cam was the last person with the ball. So that whole season, I think I had like 39 turnovers, right? So if you look at it, when we played Hamtramck in the opener, you're like, dog, Cam, what are you doing? This is insanity to the point where I'm telling you now, and Mark and everybody's laughing. But then it's like, well, actually, when it goes and like it's in the flow of the offense and you don't have these extenuating circumstances and it actually the number of turnovers is an amenable level. Similar kind of a thing with Carson Beck, right? If you remove all the games with multiple turnovers last year, there's 1 game with 1 turnover. But again, the other ones were 2, 3, 3, and 3, which can be the issue.
First of all, I wish we would have had cell phones back then because somebody would have captured that.
I'm glad that they did. I was so mad. Like, I can remember, I was so mad because they ran this diamond in 1 press. So, they're pushing you to a side. So I'm like, fine, I'll go whichever side and let you inbound the ball. And then, so I'm like, cool. And I turn and I'm like, why are all y'all 70 feet away from? I was so, I'm mad about it again. Like I'm whatever. Jesus, man. I was so mad. And we had a field house gym, i.e. the one with the track upstairs. And so we had practice the next day at Cranbrook. And coach was just like, and so underneath the stairs up, so there were 2, you had to have 2 points of egress. So there was like one really like tight stairway, and there was like the really nice wooden stairway up to the track and everything. So over there, that's where the ball cage was. So I knew the combination. Okay, we're gonna go in there and get the basketballs and everything. And so my coach comes in as I'm opening the ball cage. He goes, "Hey, whoa. What are you doing?" I said, we got practice, coach. I got it. He said, "Oh, no." And this was the universal symbol from all of the coaches. He goes, "Y'all not practicing down here today." And I go, "Oh my God," which is a sign for you're up on the track running. And we ran and we ran and we ran. My God. Sorry. I went on memory lane there, but y'all get my point.
And I understand the running bit for a disciplinary situation, but how is that going to help the team overcome a turnover issue?
It was one of those things like y'all weren't paying attention and doing what you needed to do.
Sure.
So I will let you run and think about it until you realize that you need to listen to what the actual plan was, which was not to have me stand there in the corner and turn the ball over by myself. We ran. Jesus, we ran. Anyways, so yeah, lots of turnovers in my first high school basketball game. Lots of turnovers for Carson Beck in a few games this last year. But in a similar way to how Cam Ward's turnover numbers were lower when he came to Miami with Shannon Dawson, who's confirmed at this point, I believe, to be returning as offensive coordinator. I hope and expect that Carson Beck's turnover numbers will decline as a Miami Hurricane this year.
So when I look at these stats, I derive some negative much more than positive, and this is why. So what I'm looking at here, and first of all, I apologize for when I first posted the stats that I wiped Cam and I off the screen. I was in a different window, so I had no idea what it looked like there. But anyway, what I'm seeing is that basically Georgia threw the football just as much this season than they did the previous season. Obviously, Beck missed the second half of the SEC championship game and did not appear in the postseason. He had a completion percentage that dropped almost 7% this year. Mm-hmm. He completed almost as many passes, 12 less passes for 500 less yards. He doubled his interceptions. And again, you took it in one direction. It could also be argued in another direction that if you're going to throw 12 interceptions, wouldn't you just rather have him throw one every game? That, he's going to give away the ball once, and that's going to be it. And not 3 times against Florida. They almost lost that game. And maybe Kentucky was one of those games. I don't know. To bunch up the interception, unless you want to bunch them up against UMass, and instead of winning 42-3, you're going to win 42-13 because he threw 3 picks. Take those games out of the mix. I would rather have those interceptions be spread over the course of the season. So those are my negative takeaways, that the yardage per completion is way down.
Yep.
The percentage, 6.5 percentage points, 6.7 percentage points down, double the interceptions on only 31 more pass attempts. The disclaimer would be that Georgia led the nation in dropped passes this year.
See, that's where I was going to go. Like, all of those things are true. I know that, we did double, or he did double the interceptions. That's a verifiable fact. Like, I'm not going to sit here and try to say anything else. But when you had like 35 to 40 drops, just drop, like open, hit you in the hand drops, not like, oh, might have, could. I mean, like, they were bad. Like, I just searched it up in another tab right now on Twitter. Like, just in the SEC championship game alone, you know what I mean? There were tons. So I believe that impacted negatively the numbers that you're talking about. I mean, because there were multiple touchdowns in multiple games that Georgia receivers just put on the turf. So while I agree, yes, those things are true. The completion percentage did go down, the raw yardage, the raw interceptions went up, all those kind of things. I know in a couple of those instances, if you just catch the ball and go score, first of all, that's going to, be a positive, but then you're going to remove the plays that were negative because there were a couple interceptions that came after some drops and things like that. So, I mean, it wasn't even like one drop here or there. They led the country in drops. Think if their whole entire receiving core was D. Wiggins and Mark Pope. Shout out to those gentlemen who at one time led the nation in drop percentage when they were Miami Hurricanes and former high school teammates here. Like, you remember that. And those were only 2 of those dudes. Everybody on Georgia was dropping the ball. Like, when you have 40 drops, like, that's crazy. So, I mean, that was also a thing that contributed. So all the things you said were negative in terms of like the counting stats at the end and everything. True. Will not controvert that. But the other, the glaring elephant in the room, they just drop the goddamn ball all the time, man.
Do you remember when you were first learning to catch a football and the natural inclination for many of us was to, number one, jump when you didn't need to jump, and number two, to like try to catch the football like this instead of catching with your hands, throwing. And you'll even see dudes in like the 1960s in the NFL doing that. Kirk Herbstreit made this observation of Arian Smith during the SEC championship game about 3 minutes after I was thinking the same thing. Like, this dude is jumping up, and like, he didn't do this once because he misjudged the ball, like continually jumping up, and the ball's like here, and he's just jumping and trying to box the ball in, and he's doing this as well, trying to cradle the football. It's like, wow, a guy at that level is having those kind of issues.
But that's also where, you come in and hear this guy, he's a runner, he's a track star, he's not necessarily a football player. And it's just like, what do you think untrained, like a very trained track athlete who's not a very trained, skilled football player, like, what would they do? And you look at Arian Smith, and it's like, he's wide open, he's super fast than everybody, but he's doing these things with a lack of skill in terms of and natural ability catching the ball, and those were issues. But hopefully, Miami is building the kind of a team that has guys who will catch the ball appropriately, which for the most part we did. There were some drop issues this year, but definitely not on the level of what Georgia was doing.